Why should you cleanse your gut? Because a clean gut is a strong and healthy gut, and that means better digestion, higher energy levels, and easier weight management. But you don't need all of this stuff to clean your gut. Cleaning our digestive system is actually really easy.
And we're back on the Sunshine Sports Report. False start the first time, but we're here for the next hour or so talking sports. And as I was mentioning before, this is going to be a show about sports.
Yes.
Imagine that.
Of course.
I'm Greg Daniels, once again.
I'm Marlon Jones.
And if you like the Sunshine Sports Report, we want you to share, hit that share button, as well as like and pass it along. If you have any comments, throw them in the comment section. Next week we'll have our phone line back up. Our phone line is down for this particular week. Right before the show started, Marlon asked a really good question. It was, how important are sports to the American people, or to people
In general.
In general.
Mm-hmm.
And they're extremely important as far as I'm concerned, because whenever this country has gone through a crisis of any kind, sports has always been there as a release valve.
Mm-hmm.
This crisis, sports was taken away. There was no sports. There wasn't golf. There wasn't tennis. There wasn't high school sports. There wasn't. You couldn't even go to TV and watch it.
Well, they had marble racing,
Well, and
which was riveting, actually.
Yeah, and I had an hour entertainment watching arm wrestling, but you can only do that for so long.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah, sports are extremely important. Go ahead.
And the reason why I ask this is because in this day and age where we're dealing with this COVID-19 situation, we're also dealing with the social justice issues, and we have a lot of players that are stating that my health is more important than this game, or the social justice is more important than this game. And there are a lot of players that are looking to sit out for the very purposes of basically focusing on family and or the community.
You're right, absolutely. And particularly Avery Bradley of the Lakers, he's already said that he's not returning and he won't be playing the rest of the season. Now, as far as his health issues are concerned, I understand that, but how does that help, in your opinion, how does that help the injustice?
As far as the injustice, I mean, when you're speaking of individuals where they have large bank accounts, a platform in which people are paying attention to what they have to say. I mean, you have an individual such as Colin Kaepernick, for instance, has not played a down of football in over 4 years.
Right.
Yet his voice is effective and his platform is effective towards change.
And that's the one individual that we know about. But there were a few of his teammates who also took a knee right beside Colin. We haven't heard from since.
Well, Eric Reed has stated things. Unfortunately, Eric Reed tends to come off on the wrong side of the conversation a lot of times, and is not necessarily taken as seriously as Colin is. So, but yes, and on top of that, Eric Reed was able to get back into the league.
Right. Well, he never left the league, did he?
I think
San Francisco let him go.
I think after San Francisco let him go, he was out for maybe like 1 year, and then he came back, and then he's been with the Carolina Panthers ever since.
Okay. So.
But I can definitely see things from all standpoints. Whereas if you are a player and you're looking at this from the standpoint of I can go to work and contract this virus, come home and infect my family.
Right.
They may not see that as worth it. Or you may have an individual that may say, you know what, I don't feel as though my voice or what I'm being as effective as I can be in my sport, so I want to go out here and be on the front lines of creating change. They may have, let's say they have a law degree. They may have a political science degree that they're wanting to utilize their voice and their attributes towards change in a different way.
And you mentioned an athlete who actually did that at the pinnacle of her career,
yes.
Maya Moore.
Right.
She was a MVP of her league, and she stepped away from the WNBA for a young man who was in prison.
Yes, I think he was
wrongfully convicted, and they eventually found out that he was indeed wrongfully convicted.
I think he had like a life sentence, if not. Yeah.
I'm not sure of the sentence, but I do know that Maya was able to help in getting his release.
Right.
And Maya and she says that she's going to continue to stay out and fight this fight for other individuals. So I think that the WNBA and the NBA and women's college basketball gave her that platform.
Right, exactly.
So it's always, as the old folks used to say, there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Yeah.
So LeBron James, his platform is his play,
right.
Along with, let's face it, he has an empire.
Right. He's got plenty of different venues in which he can amass change. He's got a production company for movies, television. He's got businesses, different actual local businesses. He has a shoe brand.
Right.
Plus, he's also one of the greatest players in the game.
Yeah, one of today's greatest players. So people tend to listen to him because he's one of the greatest players to ever play. Before I forget, another great player from North Carolina, he decided to call it quits today. And we knew it was coming, but it's kind of a sad day. Vince Carter officially announced his retirement.
Wow.
So,
the ageless one.
Yeah, he was 43, and he played
Still dynamic player.
Yes, he played 22 years in the NBA, the longest tenured player in the history of the NBA. He spanned.
Wait a minute, longer than AC Green?
Longer than AC. AC didn't play that long. He just looked old. So Vince spanned 22 years, 4 decades. He's the only player to play in 4 different decades of the NBA. And I was reading a little bit about Vince. And Vince, like you say, when he came in, he was dynamic from North Carolina. Well, from Seabreeze High School in Daytona, he was dynamic. And I noticed the first 10 years or so, he averaged like 26 to 24 points a season.
Right.
As he got older, his game evolved.
He was a slam dunk champion at one point.
Some people call him the greatest dunker in NBA history. And Frederick Weiss, he definitely won't disagree with that. Remember Frederick? The 7'3"
Oh.
Sherman
Yeah.
from the Olympics. What year was that? Was that like 2000?
Man, I don't remember. All I know is he got to know Vince in a way that I would rather not.
So anyway, Vince, over the 22 years, he was able to reshape his career, not once, not twice, but about 3, maybe 4 times.
Yes.
He was certainly not the same player last year as he was 4 years into his NBA career.
But he was still effective, and he was still a guy that you had to watch for him on that court. He was gonna light you up if you didn't keep an eye on him.
So Vince Carter, he's 43 after 22 years. Today he officially calls it quits. So we're gonna miss Vince playing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure we'll hear a lot from Vince Carter. Vince Carter, a Floridian like we are.
Right.
And great career, one of the greatest careers in NBA history.
Speaking of great, and we were speaking of platforms,
Right.
and you know that things have evolved to a pinnacle point to where an individual such as Michael Jordan, who has been critically silent throughout the years on many different issues,
Right.
has finally not only stepped up and actually made a statement, but has also stated that he is himself donating $100 million towards social justice.
What does that mean, though? Where does the money go?
Good question.
I mean, there is no address you can send $100 million to social justice. I think what he needs to do is say, hey, I am going to send such this amount of money to the historically black colleges or to the kids in Watts.
You know what I would love to see?
And you know what, though? It seems like all corporations are doing that now. And that sounds more like a corporate move than a social move.
I would say, I'm going to tell you what a corporate move is, and I'm going to tell you how individuals that want to actually make change and want social justice and want changes, lobbyists.
Okay.
Put your money behind lobbyists, because this is how these laws are being changed in the first place. This is why you have these corporate sponsors or these corporate companies getting the laws the way they want them, is because of the fact they have lobbyists. They have individuals that go to the Congress and basically walk in with the check and say, hey, make it happen. If you're putting money behind what you say is social justice and trying to create change, then we need to establish where someone can actually have lobbyists on our behalf making these changes.
I'll tell you what, if you can find a lobbyist and give them $100 million, you can get a lot done.
Exactly.
Now, we don't know if that's going to happen. And I'm not really a big advocate of lobbyists, although I know what you're saying is true. It does happen.
There's no way around it. If the rules are being set by the lobbyists,
well,
then the way that you are
actually,
going to
the
change
rules-
them is
the rules
with the
are
lobbyists.
actually being set by the politicians, the elected politicians.
But the
That-
lobbyists are influencing the politicians.
And I really want to get money out of politics.
And unfortunately,
But that's how I look at it.
we can want
And
it.
what happens is whoever has the most money, and we're getting away from sports.
Oh yeah, no.
Whoever has the most money has the biggest voice, and
not-
that's unfortunate.
And I'm not saying we're getting away from sports, because what I'm speaking of is we have millions upon millions of dollar athletes.
Right.
We have these owners that have millions upon billions of dollars.
Right.
They're saying they want to create social change. However, we need to create the venue in which you can say, hey, we will then provide these funds to lobby for the things that we need, as opposed to, because unfortunately the way that the way that the rules work, this is the playing field. It's almost kind of like you're trying to. It's almost kind of like you're on the sidelines. You're a fan, and you're cheering on your team, and you're thinking that if I cheer louder, they'll play better. Whereas if you actually were a coach on the sideline or a player on the field, you would actually be able to have more of an effect on the outcome of that game than if you're basically in the stands cheering for the fan. I mean, cheering for the team.
Right.
So that's all I'm saying is understandable. It may not be what you feel is you may not like that particular portion of the game, but unfortunately, if you're
It's
going
part
to,
of the game.
It's part of the game, and in order to get it done, you got to go and play. You got to go and play.
Yeah. I get it. I just don't like it.
Yeah, no, I don't like it either.
So we'll see. We'll
Yes, sir.
see. It's just that when you say billionaires, most of them are billionaires because they looked out for their best interest, their bottom line.
But when you give $100 million and you're saying, I'm giving it for social justice, okay, that's fine, well and good, but just like you said, where is it going?
What is social justice?
Exactly.
Do you give it to the police department? Do you give it to the YMCA? Who do you give it to?
Exactly. Where is the money going? How is it going to further? And then how are we going to see the effective change
I think
from
what happens
donate?
is you have that out there in the ether, but there's no accountability.
Yeah, I mean, you could have basically given that money to,
I will tell you though, there is an athlete who has donated money, and we know where it's going. That's our guy, Drew Brees.
Yes, sir.
Remember Drew Brees from several weeks ago when he said that all lives matter is what he said, wasn't it?
It was.
No.
I will never respect anyone that disrespects the flag.
Okay, well, he and his wife, Brittany, are sponsoring, they're one of the sponsors of the Black College Football Hall of Fame, the Road to Equality.
Yes, sir.
And the show is supposed to air sometime next month, and I'm not exactly sure where it's going to air from, but the hosts are going to be Steve Weish of the NFL Network,
Right.
and our guy Charles Davis
Yes,
of
sir.
CBS Sports. I also think he's on the NFL Network.
Yes,
I'm
he
not-
is. He's
So
one of the scouts.
they're going to be the host, and other sponsors of this particular show are the Cleveland Browns, the Atlanta Falcons, the Baltimore Ravens, Cincinnati Bengals, the Los Angeles Chargers, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and of course, the Robert Kraft Patriots Foundation.
Wow.
So, also Arizona Cardinals coach Cliff Kingsbury. Did you see Cliff Kingsbury's house?
Oh yeah.
Oh
Missed him.
man,
That was the one of the highlights of the draft was,
It was
just every
his
time
house.
the Arizona Cardinals were on the clock, you could get a nice, perfect view of Cliff Kingsbury's house.
and also one more, Gus Malzahn of the Auburn
Auburn Tigers.
Yeah, he and his wife are also going to be a sponsor. So that should be a pretty interesting show. And so
And I applaud Drew Brees for
we had a
stepping up.
Yeah, we had a conversation about Drew and how his teammates were going to receive him whenever they do play.
Right.
And you think it's going to be tough sledding for him?
I feel like when you're talking about 53 guys and all 53 of them being on board.
Well, actually, it's going to be more than that. But
Yeah, but you basically have a whole bunch of individuals. And there have been some of his teammates that have basically said, we'll see. And we'll see usually means, yeah, I'm not all bought in yet. Give me time.
And that's Malcolm Jenkins
Yeah, exactly.
in particular.
Yeah. So once you've done something like that and you've burned someone in that way,
Well, was that a burn or that was just?
I mean, after everything that has happened, for you to basically make the statement as though you don't understand after all that has happened, yeah, I felt like a lot of his teammates felt like it was a slap in the face, because, here it is, you went and took a knee for us, you went out but you didn't truly understand what the whole point of this was.
Good point. You just playing along.
Exactly.
Okay.
You were giving mouth service, but in actuality, you never agreed. And now, here it is. We find out that you weren't on board. You were just, it was just, so yeah, it is definitely. And also, while we're speaking of players giving back, Chad Ochocinco has stated that he is going to donate $250,000 towards giving stimulus checks to people because he doesn't feel like Trump is or the federal government is doing it fast enough. So he's going to actually give money out of his own pocket to issue stimulus checks to people.
To how many people?
Good question. However many 250,000 will cover, I guess.
Oh, 250,000.
Right.
Okay, so it could be 250,000 people if they get $1,000 apiece.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So everybody's trying to do their part.
That can be tracked.
Exactly. You know who you're helping, and you know exactly.
Yeah. A few weeks ago, before really this COVID virus had really taken effect, the Dallas Cowboys were in. They were headlines because they hadn't signed their quarterback, Dak Prescott.
Right.
I told you at the onset, folks, that Dak Prescott would be a Dallas Cowboy fan.
Yeah.
Told you that. All it was Jerry Jones trying to keep the headlines in Dallas. That's all it was.
But all he did was sign his tender, though. He still doesn't have a long-term contract.
Right. Well, he's going to be the.
He's only a Dallas Cowboy for 1 year.
And that's right.
So I mean, the problem here still rises. Now, let's
so
be clear.
he's got to prove it here.
Right. But let's be clear. My assessment of Dak Prescott is, I feel like he's an average quarterback. I don't feel like he's that good.
You don't feel like he's good?
No.
So in other words,
I don't feel like he's that good. I feel like he's as good as the talent that you have around him, but you cannot necessarily build a team around him if he's the highest paid player.
So you're agreeing pretty much with Dallas assessment.
Yes, I am. I feel like if you make him the highest paid quarterback, if you give him the type of money that he's asking for, you can't put the type of talent around him that he's going to need to flourish, because he's not Russell Wilson. You can't put mediocre talent out there or average price talent around him and then be able to get to the Super Bowl. That's not going to happen. You have to put the top paid talent around him in order to get to the Super Bowl, and that's why I feel like he's not worth what he's asking for.
So this could be his last season.
I feel like it is.
Okay.
I feel like it is. I feel like at the end of the day, the Dallas Cowboys are going to be looking for who the future of their franchise is going to be. Now, if he has a Pro Bowl year, he pushes the envelope.
Yeah, because the Cowboys are odds-on favorites to win their division.
But if they don't, if they don't play well,
what if they play well,
but they don't make the playoffs?
No, they play well. They make the playoffs. They even win the Super Bowl.
Then he gets his contract.
He gets his contract. Okay.
Because you can't not give him the contract at that point.
Well, okay. Tom Brady. Did we ever talk about Tom Brady?
Slightly. Not much.
What did you think about him going to Tampa Bay?
Shocking. I didn't think it was going to happen. There are certain things that you wake up, sky's blue, water's wet, and Tom Brady is a Patriot. And when they stated that he had sold his house in New England,
well, he's a Los Angeles guy anyway, California guy.
I was still feeling like, where there's smoke, it's nothing to it. But then when he was literally making his rounds within free agency, I'm thinking, okay, either he's trying to drive the price up for the Patriots,
or he's going to San Diego,
or he's really gone. Yeah. And then when they finally said that he was a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, it was just kind of like one of those things where it was like, where were you when this happened type situation. Like, you know, because I never thought you would ever see one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time voluntarily just walk away from a dynasty team and basically say, I'm going to take my talents elsewhere. I've never seen that happen. I mean, have you ever seen anyone at the height of their, this is almost like Larry Bird.
Well,
at the height of his career saying, okay, now I'm going to go and be I'm going to play for the Miami Heat now. I no longer want to be a Boston Celtic. I'm going to play for the Miami Heat now.
Actually, that could have happened.
It could have happened, but
it didn't happen because of the Bird rule.
Oh, you mean as far as them being able to keep their franchise players?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it could have happened.
Possibly.
But
I mean, I'm just saying the gravity of it.
I think Tom wanted something different. He was in the league. He's been in the league for 20-some years. He wants to see how things are done someplace else.
From what I'm hearing, there was actual friction between him and Josh McDaniels, which is what fueled the change.
Well, you're gonna have friction anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was there 20 years. How long has McDaniels coached there? At least, 10?
Yeah, not as many as Tom Brady has been there.
Yeah,
but I feel like in that building, everyone knows that Josh McDaniels is the coach in waiting for the New England Patriots. I feel like they're not saying it, but everything leans towards he's the coach in waiting. And if you're Tom Brady and you know that the future of the New England Patriots is Josh McDaniels, he probably thought to himself, it's about time for me to go.
Well, the fact of the matter is he's not going to be there long enough for Josh to be his coach anyway.
Who says? Because Tom Brady says he's going to play until his legs fall off.
Okay. I have no comment. I have no comment at all. We don't know. Let's talk about baseball.
Yes, sir.
Do you realize what the Washington Nationals did? The world champion Washington Nationals.
Almost forgot, didn't we?
No, I knew they were world champions. I haven't forgotten. They did something unthinkable. They cut all of their minor league players.
Mm.
Now,
wow.
I guess they'll re-sign some of them next season, but they're all gone.
They just completely wiped out their entire farm system.
Wiped out the farm system.
Mm.
I guess what they'll do is they'll sign, well, their top prospects are under contract anyway. Mm-hmm. And that kind of brings us back to baseball and what they have planned, the 60-game schedule.
Right.
They're going to start out with a 30-man roster for the first couple of weeks. Normally, what it had been was 25-man roster, but they added one roster spot, I believe, this season.
Okay.
So it's going to be 26. So they added an additional one of 30. So that gives, for the first couple of weeks, that gives the teams the option of now carrying extra relief pitchers, so they don't
burn their pitchers out.
Burn their starting pitchers out. And some of the teams are going to use extra pitchers. Some are going to use prospects, the young prospects. And it's going to make for a very interesting baseball season because now all of the games have magnified meaning.
Yeah.
Because you can't go into a 5-game losing streak.
Right.
It means something if you roll off 7 straight games.
Right.
And you win 7 straight games. 162 game season, you can have a losing month and come back and be a contender.
We've seen teams that have been at the bottom of the barrel and then all of a sudden fight their way back up, by the end of the season.
Well, maybe not the bottom, but in the middle. And if you're playing 60 games, you've got to be pretty much there the whole while. You got to be, jockey.
You got to hit the ground running.
Yeah, you got to hit the ground running. And I also, they're going to have a problem with Toronto because Toronto is the only non-American league playing baseball team in the major leagues.
Right.
So the way they're handling the coronavirus is totally different.
Right.
So
going back and forth across
the border is going to be a major issue, and especially if, say for instance, since the Southwest and the South are going through a rampant coronavirus epidemic.
Right.
So if you're playing for, say, the Marlins, do they want the Marlins up there in Canada?
And do they want to be able to go? Do they want to come down to Miami either?
Exactly. Now, the way I understand they're going to play the season is they're going to play teams that are in their division. Plus, they will play regional teams, and those regional teams will be National League teams. So we'll pick the Toronto. Toronto's division is New York, Boston, and who is the fourth team? New York, Boston, Baltimore.
Okay.
Now, and the regional teams would be the New York Mets, the Philadelphia Phillies, it's not Pittsburgh, it's the Phillies, the Washington Nationals, and one other team.
Okay.
So those will be the 60 games that they play.
Right.
So those are really northeast teams, but they're still, the virus is still there.
Exactly.
So,
and even though it has they have flattened the curve in New York,
it's still
a it's still a hotbed.
It's still a problem. Yeah,
Right.
it's still an issue. So I'm not sure how they're going to do that.
No.
What made sense to me was what basketball is doing.
Playing it in one location.
Playing it in one location. You only have one state law to worry about. I think one of the problems though is that the players didn't want to be isolated in one area away from
their
family.
families. Exactly.
So
basically what you're dealing with here is one long home game. One long away game is basically what it boils down to for basketball.
You're playing on the road. You're on the road all the time,
right?
Except for the Magic.
Exactly.
And even the Magic will be on the road if you consider that there's no fans.
Right.
So they might as well be playing in Alaska.
Yeah.
So
it's definitely going to be interesting just to see exactly how it's going to be implemented once they take the field, the court, the pitch, where whatever sport that we happen to be playing. How exactly is it implemented? And
in fact, as we speak now, the day is the 25th of June. They're supposed baseball is supposed to start around, and they don't even know for sure, July 24th or July 25th. One of those 2 days, and that's not set in stone. So they don't even know.
And the scary part about that, Mr. Greg, is let's say that you do start back up.
Right.
Let's say that you're about 30 games into the season. And then all of a sudden someone comes up and tests positive.
Oh, they're going to test positive without question.
And at that point, does it completely shut the entire league down?
No, it doesn't. But what will happen is they hope not to have a mini epidemic within themselves. What will happen is that player will no longer be able to play. And he will have to at least self-quarantine for at least 2 weeks, and maybe more.
But like I said, is it possible? How do you ascertain when he got it, and then who, in fact, he came in contact with?
Well, it'll be easy to. Well, as far as baseball is concerned, yeah, it'll be very difficult.
Exactly.
But they're testing every day, so you'll know pretty much when they contracted it. But the thing is,
are they testing or are they temperature checking?
No, they're testing.
Okay.
They're testing, or they say they're testing. Now the question is, how good are those tests?
Yeah, because
The
they're
question
saying that
is,
the chests are 50-50 right now.
Yeah. So, the reason why they're playing the season is, one, the players want to get paid because they do have bills. TV, they have the responsibility to their sponsors.
Right.
So there's a whole lot of money involved in them playing one way or the other, or not playing.
Well,
So-
I mean, TV is the one that's going to benefit the most out of this because at the end of the day, you have a captive audience.
Yeah. Because basically, there's no one going to be at the stadium.
No.
Even if it's, say, 25,000. That's small compared, because the demand is going to be great to go to a baseball game, especially if it's only 60 games. So you're going to have cookouts and everything else at the house. It's going to be like watching college football. It's going to be just like that. Weekends watching baseball, 60 games is what, about a month,
Right.
month and a half? So this could help baseball. It could help baseball.
Now, speaking of sports that have started back going again,
Golf,
NASCAR.
NASCAR.
had
Is that
Talladega
a
just
sport?
recently.
Is that a sport or is that a skill?
That is a sport. That I will say, being able to have the reflexes to have that much steel moving that fast, and on top of that, that much heat around you, it is a sport, and those guys have to be in tip-top shape to be able to do what they do. But Talladega was just this past week,
Right.
and bit of controversy. We've been talking about this. Bubba Wallace, the only African-American NASCAR driver, and coincidentally, the garage in which he was assigned had a noose in the garage. Not a rope, not a pulley.
No.
And just recently, if you go go online, Google, or go to ESPN, you will see, they will show you what was hanging in the garage. That was a noose. Now, the FBI has done an investigation and stated that noose had always been there.
Well, it's been there since October.
It had been there since October. But my concern here is still, there were no other garages where there were nooses hanging.
As far as NASCAR could tell.
So you've assigned the only African-American driver to a garage, and coincidentally, that garage has a noose hanging in there. I think there's more to this, and I feel like it is something that still needs investigating, in my opinion.
Well, who would investigate it? If the FBI is the premium investigative body in this country.
NASCAR needs to investigate it, because here's my question. This is Talladega.
Right.
This is a NASCAR venue.
Right.
So the powers that be that assign the garages, they have to know what was in that garage.
I don't know.
It's too coincidental in the climate in which we're currently in for the one guy that basically was able to communicate that he wanted the Confederate flag banned from NASCAR, and then coincidentally he gets the garage with the noose hanging in it. Even though it's been sitting there since October, you assigned him that garage. That's the garage you assigned him, and it has a noose hanging in it. Because up until this point, it's making him look like Jesse Smollett. I don't feel like that's fair to him. Not if you're telling me that noose was hanging there since October.
It doesn't really matter. When it was there, it was there.
Exactly.
He walked in, he saw it, he said something.
Right.
So
And checked,
You can't compare him to Jesse Smollett.
and they've checked around throughout, because I've done my research on this. They've checked around the other tracks, and out of the thousands of garages that there are around the other tracks, that's the only garage in all of NASCAR with a noose hanging. And you assigned it to the only black driver in your sport.
Well,
I think someone knew that noose was there, and they knew who they were putting in that garage.
probably so.
So I feel like NASCAR doesn't need to let this slide.
I
They
think
need to investigate it further.
I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I think everybody gets a little something from this story. I think that people who are picketing against the Confederate battle flag, they get something. I think NASCAR gets something because of the way that the drivers and, well, the entire sport bonded behind Bubba. And I think those people who, for whatever reason, side with the Confederate flag, now they get something too. And because, and keep in mind who NASCAR's consumers are.
Yeah, there's a very heavy Dixie.
So everybody
Cover,
gets
yeah.
so everybody gets something. So this is not a Jesse Smollett story. This is,
But the only reason why I'm saying that is because that's on social media. This is what it's being phrased.
I think it's damage control that has been done. I think NASCAR's not going to do much more investigating because I think this is what the story is that NASCAR wants. I think they want the image of all their drivers behind pushing Bubba Wallace's car to the starting line. They want that image. They want, excuse me, the image of them not having the Confederate battle flag. They also want the image of them not being anyone in particular put a noose in Bubba Wallace's garage. They want that image.
And like I said before,
so it's a, I don't know if it's a win-win, but there's something for everybody in this story.
and I get what you're saying. What I don't want it to be lost on this is somehow, some way, there's too much of a perfect storm here.
Exactly. It's kind of like all lives matter.
Exactly. So when you're basically talking about the fact that someone saw fit to put the only, and I keep emphasizing this, there's only one black driver in NASCAR.
One major. He's the only major black driver. There are others.
I don't know of any other ones.
Well, they are. There are others. Within the drivers, there are others. But he is the one major star, the major driver. I imagine he's in the top 15, maybe top 20 driver, which is pretty good for NASCAR. If you can finish it within the top 10, you're a heck of a driver.
But the thing that bothers me about this is still, when you are assigning these garages, what is the possibility that out of all the garages, there's only one garage that has a noose in it, and you give that to him?
I have no idea.
And that's what I'm saying.
I don't know
they
what
need
the
to
odds
find
are.
out. They need to find out who assigned the garages, and they need to basically find out where do you stand on this conversation, because you assigned this man to the garage that had the
I don't
noose in
think NASCAR has the stomach nor the taste to continue this conversation. I think the conversation, as far as they're concerned, is over.
And that's,
they've got a lot to bet. They got a lot ahead of them with that Confederate flag situation. I don't think they want to go any further with the Bubba Wallace as far as the noose situation is, because, like I said, They stand behind him. The president of NASCAR came out and they said he had a statement to make, and I think that's going to be it. So I don't see any more investigations because, like I said, they went to the FBI, and you're probably right. You're probably right. NASCAR probably would have done a better job of investigating it than the FBI.
Right.
Because the NASCAR knows who to ask. The FBI has to ask NASCAR who to ask.
And then for you to say that it's always been there, it's just like, okay, so I don't want to beat the dead horse. At the end of the day, you know, I feel like it needs to be investigated further because I feel like, you know, there is. I'll give you a perfect example. I don't want to belabor this. I read a story just earlier today, right?
Okay.
3 police officers in Wilmington, North Carolina. Just so happens their camera goes on accidentally.
Accidentally?
Accidentally.
All 3 of them?
One of them.
Oh.
And they were having a very, very derogatory conversation about race. Whereas the one of them even stated that he was ready to, as he said, slaughter them all. Now, if in fact, which you can, you know, divine intervention, we, you know, for those of us that believe in God, divine intervention in this particular instance, if in fact no one knew how these guys were feeling, then you don't know that the fact that they're within your police force, they're influencing things within your police force, but this is how they're feeling, this is where they're moving. So I say that to say this: if you have someone that is high up enough within NASCAR that they are assigning garages and they are of the mindset that they felt like this was something that they wanted to get across to the black guy, that's somebody that you want to flesh out and say, okay, you have no place in our sport. You know, you have to go. So that's my soapbox on that, and I'm gonna leave that alone.
Okay. Let's stay in Alabama,
Yes, sir.
but let's go up to Tuscaloosa.
Oh, Crimson Tide country.
Yes, indeed. Before, I too heard something today. It was about the University of Alabama. Actually, it started in Tennessee. Phil Former, the former coach of the Crimson Tide, of the Tennessee Volunteers,
Yes.
is now the athletic director.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, you didn't know that?
No, I did not hear
Phil
that.
Former is the athletic director. He says he expects a full stadium at the Tennessee Volunteer games this fall. And keep in mind, it's like
No, he's the athletic director for Tennessee or for Alabama?
Tennessee. We'll
Okay.
get to Alabama.
Okay.
But he's the athletic director for Tennessee.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind, that stadium seats 100+ thousand people. So I'm wondering, what world is he living in?
Not on the planet Earth.
Now, in Tuscaloosa, they said it's pretty much the same thing that Phil Former said. In fact, the mayor of Tuscaloosa says over a weekend, an 8-game schedule, the University of Alabama grosses $176 million per weekend.
Yeah.
They said if they don't play before a packed house in Tuscaloosa, the city of Tuscaloosa would lose $2 billion. Now, Tuscaloosa is not a city, it's a town.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's a town. So that has got to be the biggest revenue stream that the city of Tuscaloosa gets every year. There's nothing that could come close to that.
But as small as the town of Tuscaloosa is, what have you been doing with $2 billion of revenue each year?
A lot of rich farmers. So the point is that Tennessee and Alabama and probably every other SEC team or school is looking to fill their stadiums up for that same reason. They play, Knoxville is where they play football in Tennessee. Knoxville is a pretty good sized town,
Right.
but I imagine they probably make as much or pretty close as much as Alabama makes per weekend. And that is a huge revenue loss if they don't see 100,000 people come in. I don't even know what the population of Knoxville is, but it can't be too much more than that.
Well, see, most of the time when you're talking about these games, it's not the town, but it's travel, it's the students, which these campuses are now virtual right now, so there's no student section. You know, so you don't have the students coming in.
Well, we know that the students are going to be there because they've already said if the students aren't there, then they're not going to have any sports. So we know that the students will be there.
Okay, but you know that's still voluntary for the students. You don't have to. You know, I mean, you're not. If you don't feel safe, you're not going back. You're gonna take your online classes, right?
I guess. Yeah.
So
I don't know. I don't.
So you don't have the students. Then you have the alumni that are traveling in, that are season ticket holders that are constantly there every single season. They have to be able to travel in. If it's not safe to travel, and let's say that person's from Florida, let's say that person's from Washington, let's say they're not going from here to there in this climate of COVID-19 to be around 100,000 people from everywhere else.
You would think not, but we will have to see.
Well, we just saw, as far as a Trump rally, 6,500 people at a Trump rally.
And most of them didn't have masks on.
Most of them didn't have masks on, but the individuals that would be in there with masks, they stayed home. I feel like as much as we have a lot of people out there that are basically bucking the system and saying, hey, I'm going to go, I'm going to, no matter what, there's a considerable amount of individuals out there that are saying, you know what, no, this thing is real. I'm going to stay home. I'm going to protect my family. I don't want to get sick. And they've polled, I heard that the NFL did a poll where a majority of the people polled stated unless there is a cure or a vaccine, they will not be in the stadium. So
we're pretty close, sure that there won't be a cure or vaccine
not this
by
year.
September.
So if you're an NFL, and I was recently doing some research on Disney because Disney is getting ready to open soon, and this is one of the things that I've actually stated when people have asked me about, the possibility of, them having people in the stands. In order for you to open a stadium, it costs money.
Yeah.
The lights, the turnstiles, the
employees.
security,
Yeah.
all of the money that in the concessions, all of this costs money. So if you are going to open up that stadium, you need to know that you're going to have a full house. You cannot open that stadium up with the possibility that you're going to open up a full stadium and you're going to get 6,500 people. That's not going to be, you're not going to make enough to cover the revenue that it costs to pay security, pay for concessions, pay for the lights, pay for all of the things that cost to make that work.
We don't know how much money major college athletics make. We don't know. We only know what they tell us. So we don't know what the nest egg is. We don't know if they don't have some money set aside for a rainy day like now. We don't know that.
But it does not make good business to put yourself in a deficit situation if you don't have to. So
Well, they have to.
no, they don't.
They have to. They have to play. They have to play college sports.
They have to play, but in regards to, they will cover the television deals,
Right.
but you can't guarantee that you will have the amount of individuals in the stadium that will cover the cost
No.
that it means to open up a stadium. So it just makes no sense.
Well, I mean, they have to open up the stadium anyway for the game to be played.
But once again, it's concessions, security.
Well, see now, that's one thing I wouldn't do. I wouldn't. I wouldn't eat at a college game. Not right now.
But once again, that's that revenue. That's part of that revenue.
Right.
You
Oh,
know?
by the way, 187,500 people live in Knoxville, Tennessee. So their population goes up by a third every 8 weeks, for 8 weeks a year.
And every one of them are not Vols fans.
Well, I don't know.
Most likely, every one of them are not Vols fans. And even if they were, probably couldn't afford to go to the games. So I just feel like it's a lot of logistics involved, and I feel like as much as these owners and these athletic directors and all these individuals are talking about revenue is not there unless people are there.
You know,
And it's just not.
while you saying that, I've always had this question, and maybe you can think of this too. We know how much each college charges for an education,
Right.
but how much does that education actually cost? In other words, how much does a school spend on a student to educate them?
So I mean, you've got the facilities, you've got
The facilities are already there,
the
and the professors are going to be there.
Well, I mean, you got to pay for the lights. You got to pay for.
And the lights are going to be on. Say, for instance, you're a freshman. You're going to University of Maryland. How much, you're going to be a freshman this year. How much does it cost to educate you? How much does that college?
It's a lot. It's a lot into it. It's a
Well,
lot into
well,
it.
wait a minute. University of Maryland, they're going to have the school, they're going to have the classes, even if you don't go. But by you going, how much is it going to cost them to educate you?
Well, it's like so saying. You're talking about a lot of different costs. You're talking about the professor. They have to pay the
But
professor.
wait a minute. Professor's already there.
But he still has to be paid.
And he's going to be paid whether you go there or not.
No, he's not going to be paid if you don't
I'm talking
go there.
about you, Marlon Jones. You individually, Marlon Jones. How much does it cost the University of Maryland to educate you? Not educate your classmates, not pay for your professors, not pay for the lights. All of that is already on. You're walking into the school. The school is already operating.
But your revenue is going to pay for a portion of that professor's salary.
How much does it cost?
Good question. Because
How much does it cost?
And that's what I'm saying. I don't know, because I would have to know the professor's salary. I would have to know the facilities, how much it would cost to keep the facilities running. Because I will tell you this, and working with the railroad, I've actually been a part of providing the coal for a university that it costs to keep the generators running in order to power the university.
Okay.
And that cost a lot.
Okay.
So even in
You're part of a class of, we'll make it fairly small, 150.
150.
That's a fairly small class, isn't it?
I mean, no, that's a pretty big class.
Okay, we'll
That's a
make
pretty
it.
big class.
We'll make it 100. 100. Your student 100. 99 other students have paid their tuition. the lights are on, the professors are getting paid, the coal has been paid for. How much does it? We don't know. We don't know. And each school has its own price because University of Maryland is pretty prestigious. We'll take a school like Cheney State. Education, the cost to be educated is less. Now, why is it less? I'm not sure, but it's less. But you can still get the same, pretty much the same education. So how do they quantify it? Well, the whole thing is, you were talking about it costs money to operate the stadium. We don't know how much money, how much profit a university makes because we don't know how much they make per student and what the costs are. And because, for one thing, each school can set their own price. And what makes one school more valuable than the other, I don't know. Is it kind of like the difference between a Nike shoe and another sneaker brand?
I mean, that's one other thing. You got to basically pay for each one of those players. You got to pay for their shoes. Every single one of those players' shoes has to be paid for.
Oh, they get that. Nike
doesn't give that to them.
Pretty close.
I mean, they don't just give it to them.
But we'll say television pays for that because that they directly television money actually comes directly from the athletics.
Plus, college football coaches, they're pretty high paid.
Well, everybody's high paid.
I mean, we're talking about some of the lesser coaches are making $2 million a year.
I know.
So
they are okay. So we've got to get someone to quantify how much an education costs, a college, a university, because I say it's probably less.
I'm sure it is.
Less than what the normal student pays. Okay, since we figured out that there's less than we figured out that there's less than 200,000 people who actually live in Knoxville, Tennessee, but 8 weeks out of the year they get at least 100,000 new people because we didn't even count all the people who are outside of the stadium. Okay, Marlon. Not only that, now we know that there's 300,000 people for 8 weeks in Knoxville. It's also 1 minute left in the show, so we gotta say our goodbyes. Until next week, we're gonna try to find someone who can quantify what an education, not what it costs to educate just an individual.
Per student.
Not per student, an individual. Okay, until next week, it's Greg Daniels.
Marlon Jones.
On the Sunshine Sports Report, and we're on 904 Live. Shoot.
That seemed like it went by fast.
Y'all ever heard of the Soul Food Bistro? I can't wait to eat them collard greens, some smothered chops, and that mac and cheese. That homemade southern goodness, y'all, with cornbread that you won't believe.